present today. That is so exciting.
3 minutes. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Tuesday, April 1st, 2025 at 1:25 in the afternoon. We have continuing to look at bill introductions. So we have Representative Rachelson here. She has 2 bills that she would like to present to us. So welcome, Representative. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm Representative Barbara Rachelson. And for those of you that are in your first term, you probably don't know that non-consensual towing has been an issue that I have been working on for a really long time. And I took a different strategy this year, which was rather than to introduce one big bill, I divided it up into 3 different bills. 2 of them landed in your committee. My original intent with the 2 bills that you had was to try to divide up the consumer protection parts of the bill. And that is bill number H268. I also had a second bill, which is more of the technical transportation aspects, although there are some consumer protections in that, and that is bill H329. And I know they both landed here, and I will talk to you a little bit about each of those bills. The third bill is actually in House Judiciary, and it affects victims of stolen cars that are then getting towed. So just to put that out. So let me talk about H329 first, because it's the newest bill. And it seemed to me when I was thinking about the issue more, that Vermont's abandoned towing laws really set the stage for a lot of the issues that we have with consumer protections. So H329 is focused on the entire process of what happens under our current abandoned vehicle laws. It's important to look at what is considered an abandoned vehicle and when a car hasn't been abandoned but is treated as such. So basically, many other states have, and I'm happy to send you my attachments, not my attachments, my materials later. I just did not have a chance to prep them in a way that would be helpful, I think, for you to see. So many states divide up their abandoned vehicle laws into immobile vehicles that are incapable of moving under their own power due to an accident, mechanical breakdown, or weather conditions, or an unattended vehicle, which is interfering with or impeding with the orderly flow of traffic on public or private property in the absence of its owner or authorized driver, or left on public or private property due to the arrest or of the driver. And in Vermont, we don't have that. In some cases, states are very clear on like the condition of what an abandoned vehicle would cover. So just to give you a couple of situations of when cars are towed but not really abandoned. I sit on the City of Burlington Parallel Justice Commission. At one meeting, and this was very early on in my learning about this issue, they showed me data on the number of times victims of crime had their cars towed. If the crime victim was assaulted or hurt and they were admitted to the hospital for treatment, usually they were sent by ambulance, they weren't able to drive. Their car would be towed after 48 hours. So the burden on someone who had been horribly injured was to then pay and retrieve their car after they were released from the hospital. And it meant very steep storage charges. So the staff at the Parallel Justice Commission were paying victim compensation funds that they had control of to help pay for these towing and storage reimbursements, which was getting expensive. And many times it was too late and people's cars had already been sold because they were not reachable because they were in the hospital. And I recently learned that there was actually a lawsuit against the Department of Motor Vehicles for somebody that was, I don't know if she was at the retreat, but she was hospitalized for significant mental health issues. Not somebody from Chittenden County. And the relative sued because the car was worth $30,000 and DMV made a settlement. So I am not going to get into great detail about the stolen cars, but basically there are a number of calls and emails that I and others have been getting when somebody's stolen car gets discovered, it gets abandoned somewhere. Either, they ran out of gas and don't want to put more gas in, or they crash the car up. And all of a sudden, the victim whose stolen car it is getting hit with $1,800 towing and storage charges. And they're like, wait, my car was stolen. So since Vermont law considers cars abandoned after 48 hours, cars that are not permanently left get treated as if they were. What's even more ironic is the laws in Vermont for other types of abandoned modes of transportation. If your boat or plane is abandoned, you have many more rights than if your car is abandoned. And the time period is longer. So currently, abandoned vehicles are subject to possession within 30 days of the date the vehicle was discovered, regardless of notice. Upon receipt of a motor vehicle form, the commissioner of the DMV is tasked with identifying and notifying the owner of the vehicle by mail. But the way that our current law states is to mail a first-class letter to the last address on file from the last car registration. So DMV has said many people don't get those letters. I have a lot of constituents, as I'm sure many of you do, who are not owners, they're renters, and they move and they don't always remember to file their, my papers on here. They don't remember to file their updated information, or they're for whatever reason, they're not getting the notification. That's the only requirement in Vermont. Other states have more extensive requirements. Most states require notification in posting in a local newspaper. Many states also have a website where somebody can find out if their vehicle was actually towed. So one thing that people have said is, oh my gosh, my car was stolen. No, it actually wasn't stolen. It was towed because they thought it was abandoned. So we do have on the website, if your boat is abandoned, there's a website for that. If your plane is abandoned, there's a more rigorous process for getting your plane back. So another issue is basically, this bill would lengthen the time from 48 hours to a longer time period. And another right it would give is it would give a consumer the ability to challenge the abandoned tow. Most states have that option where you can file a petition and go to court and say wait, I wasn't abandoning my car. Many other states too call an abandoned car a car that's over 5 years old, a car that has a resale value of under a certain amount. So that's another requirement of this bill. Also, another requirement might be, should there be a posting on the website? I've talked to the treasurer about when your property is missing. He's got all those brochures already going out and said he could easily add abandoned cars to that. So it also would establish a rate for an acceptable towing and storage fee when it's not on public property. Vermont law currently only regulates the rate if it's a tow from a public spot. Towers should get paid for what they're doing, the way our current laws work now, the tower can fill out a form. DMV's responsibility is to send the two notices out. If those two notices, if somebody gets the notice and objects, then the title is not transferred. But in many cases, people don't get the letter, they don't understand the letter. We've had people who find out that they owe $2,500 and are like, I'm going to have to forfeit my car. I can't pay that. I know this committee is well aware of what a car means in terms of having a job and being able to support oneself. I got a letter this winter from a couple in Barry who got towed due to the winter street cleaning. They got towed on a Friday night. The towing lot was closed over the weekend. And on Monday, they had a bill for over $1,000 and ended up writing to actually Chair Lalonde, who passed it on to me, saying they had to forfeit their cars. And now that, like, I drive my cars until they are not drivable anymore. And so, again, what might appear to be an abandoned car is not always an abandoned car. The other thing is the way Vermont's laws now, let's say somebody owes $500 for towing and storage. If you take somebody's title and you can get $5,000 for the car, as well as sell the contents of the car, which the tower also currently has access to, the tower keeps all of the proceeds. And so this bill would set up a committee to look at, should the rest of the money go to the state of Vermont? Should it, ideally, should it go back to the owner of the car first, unless you really can't notify the owner, in which case, after the tower gets their fair charges, that money should go elsewhere. So that's that bill in a nutshell, and I'm not sure if it's this committee or transportation's. My other bill, which I'll switch to since you didn't give me 3 hours.
We've got about 4 minutes.
Okay.
We gotta get back on track.
Okay, I'm sorry. I will. So the next bill, I will, I have a little fact sheet on. I did not bring enough copies. I will get it sent electronically. But this one is it's the same bill I introduced last biennium, and it looks at some consumer protections and transparency issues. Car and Driver Magazine, you're welcome to pass those around. Car and Driver Magazine was very clear when they did an article a few years ago that Vermont was one of the worst states for towing protections. I printed this last week. Since I have first introduced these bills, more and more states have come online and have put towing reforms in place. And there are currently many states that are considering doing it now. The bill that I introduced is based on the model Towing Consumer Bill of Rights that the National Council of Insurers has been working on and just reapproved. And again, some of the issues are the same as the issues that I just mentioned with the abandoned vehicle law. But basically, there are, and I can get you the data, DMV had sent me today updated data, but it wasn't complete. This is happening in every county. Chittenden County has the most. Franklin County is up there, Windsor County. I believe there was no county that hasn't had issues, and it would provide consumers with one, access to the things in their car. Your car gets towed, your medicine is in your car, your gun is in your car, your computer or your cell phone are in your car, your child's car seat. Having to get access to those items is really key. A lot of towers only take cash, and so sometimes people are not able, they go to get their car and there's no other method of payment. It also would make sure that if a towing lot is closed, people are not charged for towing fees that day. And this bill sort of lists out a bunch of different things, including getting an itemized receipt. If there's damage to the car that happened from the tow, which I've heard from a bunch of people about, being able to question that. it would have the towers take photos ahead of time. One, to show what the shape the car is in. It's a protection for the towers, but also why people are towed. I have had people contact me who are like, I have no idea why I was towed. I didn't see a sign. I have no idea. And I think it would help both consumers and towers. And so I'll stop there. As you know, would be thrilled to talk to any of you more. Should you decide to take the bill, I can get you more materials on it, but knew you wanted to keep it short.
Great. Barb, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you so much. I know you're working on many things, so I was thrilled to get the invite.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great.
Representative Marie. You just,
Oh, we got bumped. I was like, it's 140.
you just happened to fall down in the end.
What?
Mike, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Sorry to hold you up for 10 minutes.
Legislative time.
It's fine.
For the record, Mike Moriarty, I'm the state representative for the Wyndham Ford District. That's down in the Southeast Kingdom, Putney and Dummerston. And I'm here with a short form bill to put in front of you. And I just want to say, the reason I use short form bills is I am one of the people who feels like our staff gets tasked with doing way too much for bills that never get off the wall. And I feel like I try and put short form bills in until a committee's ready to take it up. And then our staff could flesh out the bill. So this is a bill which would establish age gates for social media. And we currently use age gates for sports gambling. My understanding is they're effective. They're not a lot that they have to do to establish them. But as the research builds on the hazards of social media for our teens, I feel like this is something we would do well to think about. There's a growing body of research. The Pew Research Center has a lot of research. There's a professor from NYU, Jonathan Haidt, who has a book out, The Anxious Generation, which speaks a lot, especially to the damage girls between the ages of 10 and 14 suffer from being online too much. In worst case scenario, they're bullied, they're harmed, and in some cases, suicide ensues. It's a tough landscape out there where people act anonymously and with impunity. And whether adults want to do that by choice, that's their piece. But when our youth are under age 16, I think it's important for us to try and put some safeguards out there, make it a little harder. It doesn't mean they're not going to get around these things, but just the fact that if we put some barriers up there, they might take notice. And I actually see in the K through 8 school we have in Putney, the students are making note of this. We don't allow cell phones in the school. When they walk in the building, they go to the office first, they hand off their cell phone, it gets put in the yonder pouch. And at the end of the day, they can pick it up again. Students, for the most part, don't have a problem with this. I think they're starting to see the harm that can come from social media as well. And there are limits at the school that they can't access that. And they're okay with that. I think if we establish, just like with any parenting, if you establish boundaries, for the most part, there can be some pushback, but ultimately I think they can be appreciated. And as the adults in the room, I hope we can take that on and help our kids that way.
Yeah, hi. So I just have a question. I mean, I like the concept. How would you, did you give some thought about how the consent mechanism would work out? I don't think give consent.
Would students give consent?
No, I mean, I'm thinking about before you go on a platform, you'd have to get a parental consent. Is that what I understand?
The bill is a short form bill, so
Yeah.
there's not a lot of detail there.
No.
And that's for the erudite members of this committee to.
That's Yeah.
Wow.
Fair enough. So that's Tony.
Yeah.
He's in charge of that.
And as I said, the age gates we have for sports gambling are in effect, and I think they're effective.
Yeah.
It would mean they'd have to, if they don't have a driver's license already, they'd have to get a form of ID, but that's easily possible for, they may already have it if they do any traveling. There are forms of ID available.
Emily?
Everything's right, thank you.
Mike, thank you.
Thank you. Short form bill, short presentation. Thanks a lot for this consideration. Thanks for your work on that bill. It was on the floor the other day too.
Thank you for your comment, Bill. Well,
Now do I go?
5 minutes.
I can do it in a minute. Andrew's gonna do it, actually. So Monique Priestley, so we heard about the Small Business Technical Assistance Exchange Program during the budget discussions. And I had submitted a bill just in case it was needed, for later, in which case it is now needed. And so this is, the program where the Regional Development Corps basically have a system, a website, is it vermonteconomicdevelopment.com?
RDCs of Vermont.
RDCs of Vermont. RDCs of Vermont. There's basically a matchmaking process of a business needs a service. Like it could be, I've actually referred people to it. Super helpful, especially for people who are just trying to grow a little bit or just trying to start. So it could be like, I need somebody who can consult on a website or marketing practices or audio visual type stuff, lots of other uses. And so people can apply for up to $5,000. And so it's a Vermont business that gets paired with another Vermont business, basically an option, a list of vendors, and the matchmaking process happens. And yeah. So I know we talked about it already, so I'm going to keep it under 5 minutes. And also just a suggestion, if I know there's an economic development bill from the Senate, and so potential vehicle of attaching. That's it. Nope. Dave's not going to let me up.
Comment if I could. I may have mentioned this already, but give me if I have. My daughter has used this in her own business to get the help she needed to get the financial side of things built up. And she's now at the next level of being able to bid for larger contracts and stuff because her financial house is in order. So good stuff here.
Cool. Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, good.
Question? Great. Thank you. Good job.
Back coach.
Go ahead and have a seat, Kate. Timing is perfect.
Use card. That's right. Something.
Thanks for coming in.
Thing me. Should I go ahead and get started?
Yep. For the record.
For the record, Representative Kate Logan from the Chittenden 16 District in Burlington, and I serve on the House Committee on Environment. So the bill that I've been asked to introduce to you today is H 338, an act relating to unemployment compensation. It is a very short bill. There is one amendment to our unemployment insurance policy in the disqualification section. And so these are specifically in the exemptions to disqualification. So
no disqualification of an employee will happen from receiving unemployment compensation after the first 14 days following essentially the beginning of a labor dispute. So this bill aims to allow workers involved in a labor dispute with their employer to be eligible for unemployment compensation, so long as that labor dispute that results in a work stoppage lasts longer than 2 weeks. This is a policy that's been adopted in a couple other states so far. And it's just seen as a way to ensure that labor disputes, work stoppages related to labor disputes don't end because employees feel pressure to get back on the job due to loss of income after a couple of weeks. That is the entirety of the bill.
The labor disputes a very narrowly defined term.
Yeah, a work stoppage due to a labor dispute is commonly referred to as a strike.
But it's
So-
require organized labor to exist.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't have a labor dispute or work stoppage that did not involve organized labor bargaining units.
I can't, no, you wouldn't.
Okay.
Yeah, and there are many types of organized labor who aren't eligible
Mm,
to strike in the first place. So this would be,
Yeah.
Right. I think you mentioned a couple of states had a similar provision. Recall what those would be?
not right off the top of my
That's
head.
fine.
Yeah, no, this language was based on the language from New Jersey.
Okay.
Yes, Legislative Council. So would helped me with the drafting of this bill and I'm sure would be far better prepared to give you the legal background.
Any questions?
Pretty straightforward.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Monique, you're up.
Okay.
You're getting your steps in today.
Moving right along.
4 in a row.
Oh, you have to listen to me for a while. Well.
We kept Blood's Council busy.
Maroki and I have different opinions, but great. Monique Priestley. So I think my first one is 340, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a carryover, partially a carryover from last year. So it's the kind of the primary artificial intelligence bill that I submitted last year. We didn't have time to take it up, and I would also maybe suggest we keep trying to focus on data privacy and do this, but also just consider this super important with everything that's going on, and the rise of all of artificial intelligence everywhere and everything we do. But this one was adjusted in a lot of different ways in collaboration with the AI working group that Senator James Maroney set up. And so we've had, I think, we're up to like 42 states and 200 legislators that were part of that. And we all signed like an open kind of letter together, 50 of us, and kind of agreed to push similar bills, which gets into really actually stripping the definition of artificial intelligence in mind and focusing on what it actually does at the root. So similar to privacy, where in a lot of cases we're talking about unfair and deceptive acts and uses of data. In this case, we're talking about algorithmic discrimination and then automated decision systems. And so generally, the only bill that has passed that is close to this is Colorado. And they've been doing a series of different working groups, and they're still continuing to do that. A similar bill, although different, got passed in Virginia. It just got vetoed by the governor. And in that, the governor hinted towards two things, which was one, like interruption of innovation, but the other piece was that in this case, neither side of kind of like this ends of the spectrum were happy, because it was also concerns from the advocacy kind of like civil society community that it would undermine the base kind of definitions that we have around discrimination itself. So that's really trying to be careful when we're talking about modernizing kind of the evolution of how we are seeing different elements show up, that we're not undermining base level kind of definitions and understanding. So this is largely focused on discrimination, like I said, but also transparency, trying to boost transparency into what is actually going on. So if you have an automated system that is making consequential decisions around things like employment or loans or housing or that kind of stuff, that you have the ability to, one is human interaction, like, is there a human ever in that process? And do you know that a system is the one that made a decision? And how do you find out, like, basically what was used in that decision? Accountability of things, if there's impacts like discrimination that happens, if there's harm, addressing kind of bias in data. There's also I'm not actually sure how many states at this point of all the ones that are being introduced have this, but the protection for whistleblowers with a piece to prevent retaliation is maybe an area that is different in this one. Yeah.
So when you say prevent discrimination, because we're talking about algorithms.
Yeah.
And if a algorithm produces who's deciding whether or not it's discrimination, first off?
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's a question. That is a question of, is there a person, or how is the system judging discrimination? And so one piece that comes up for this too is like making sure that models can actually, a piece of like a sticky piece that trying to navigate the stuff that comes up all the time is allowing some insight for testing to actually try to like get at that question. Yeah.
Could ask you a lot.
I know. Well, yes, this is a massive bill and a massive topic, and happy to discuss more. Happy to do a walkthrough.
I think if we move forward with this one, we would have to get a lot of input from
Oh, for sure.
companies like insurance companies,
Totally.
quite a few of our data brokers.
Yeah, and this is similar to the data privacy bill, where not only have like I spent time last session and this session having one-on-one conversations, including with industry, calls with Tesla and stuff like that, where so having conversations, including with Vermont companies, had lunches with Vermont-based companies that are using AI last year, and for this one and the bill that I'm going to talk about next. But then also largely have been going to big international conferences on this stuff to serve on panels and have conversations and listen and learn, and very much trying to make sure this is thoughtful.
I mean, my only concern is what we determine as, I guess, what we determine as discrimination.
Yeah.
It could have effects within industries, and
Yeah, I mean, I think the flag here that happened in Virginia was we already do have laws around discrimination, and it's similar to things where we've had, we choose not to have one type of like service when we were talking about earned wage access, but then the evolution of that as far as technology goes, like we want to make sure that, so we already have definitions of discrimination. We want to make sure that we're not creating new definitions that are somehow like just technological exceptions to that, and make sure that we're actually looking at how that technology applies and potentially discriminates itself. Whether, and again, this is like so much of like, is there a human involved? Who decides what discrimination is? Are they actually using the underlying kind of like basis understanding in the United States of what discrimination is and what protected classes are and things like that? And what data is being used to trip those discrimination, those decisions, basically. We can have all the time offline you want.
Take the rest of the week.
I know you could. I know you could. Great. Study groups. Let's do evening sessions on AI. Love it. Okay. Next one, 341. Is it okay if I move ahead? I'm looking at the clock. Okay.
Get time, so
Okay.
anybody has any other questions before we move on to the next one?
Fascinating, Bill, but I will ask for questions quite yet.
These two are gonna make up for it. Okay. All right. So the next one, 341. So this is so both of these bills were ones I introduced last year. This is a completely different take. So 341 is more based on dangerous systems, super consequential decision-making systems, ones that get into harm, potential harm, also systems where dual use, where you could have a thing that's like generative AI can allow you to, biologically figure out a cure for cancer, but it can also create a biological weapon. So that type of thing where systems are able to do both. So this, actually, I'm just gonna pull up the bill language because there's a few specific things. Really looking at consequential decisions, so large, like impactful decisions that you might have that a automated system, artificial intelligence is making, discrimination, direct management or operation of critical infrastructure, and vehicles. So that's where I talked to Tesla last year. Medical devices, safety systems, influence in elections, and then also when biometric data is used to be collected without consent. So those are like the main focus areas. And this really gets into transparency and safety assessments. Yeah. And this is more, I would say this is a much more narrow scope than 340. Yeah.
On that topic, we're right on the third page.
Yeah.
And it's a continued consequential decisions that are legal, so we should begin with. And I was wondering, is criminal justice system, housing, employment, credit, education, healthcare, insurance, because these are areas with protected classes, or is something to kind of line it up against?
Yeah, that's definitely like the focus was trying to like highlight those first. And also, but they're also, if we're thinking about housing, like an employment and credit, those are all areas where the everyday person is interacting. And if a job, if you get fired by an automated decision system, or you don't get hired, or you don't get a loan, or you don't get you get dropped from your healthcare insurance, you don't get into that school you applied for, you don't get that house. Those are like impactful, consequential decisions that have that could have a massive impact on your life and your well-being and your families.
So we're talking about AI taking information and then generating a decision, correct? I mean, the concern that I have is, as we talk about that, it's taking information. It's not that, and it's doing in the algorithm, it would be doing calculations and adding things up, producing a profile of, for example, for housing. If it's taking all that information in and it says, well, this person is likely to default. So you're saying if the AI says that, that's the problem? Because, I mean, it's not much different than if I personally take the information in and I look at it and I'm like, okay, this person is likely to default.
Yeah.
So
I'm not saying inherently that there is a problem with using automated decisions like to make those calls. It's what it's more having transparency into like what is the data, like is there a human involved? What types of data, like how was the data tested? Where was the data pulled from? Like how can a person, if a decision was like made against a person, how can they, how can they kind of, what's the recourse? Like how can they, so if you say you have along with data privacy, and actually the article I sent out the other day, that's the fragmented life, or fragmented self. So if you have something in your profile that's incorrect data and all of a sudden you don't get that loan for your house, but it was actually incorrect data and you just get turned down and you're not told why you got turned down. Like there was like that there should be something that says a report to you that says like you got turned down for this mortgage or this loan. It's because we found this data in your profile and that's how we used it. But you may never know that. Like I got turned down for an apartment when I was looking this summer. And I have no idea why. It was a firm online that I'm assuming was probably using AI. They wouldn't tell me why. They wouldn't tell me what data was used. And it was like very much just like a robot type thing managing properties in Vermont, which is like a thing. So I'm not saying we shouldn't use those systems. I'm saying we need to have both transparency and safety kind of processes in place to make sure that we're not doing more harm than we're doing good.
I feel like there's federal law that allows you access to that information. I might be wrong, but
I don't, okay, if you, so, and you work insurance, so potentially in your insurance field, like maybe, and I'm not sure, I don't know, I'm not an expert on insurance. But across this landscape, it is basically like where the consequential decisions are being made. We do want to make, it's just like a privacy bill. If COPPA and FERPA and all that kind of stuff is like doing what it's supposed to do and there's no loopholes, great. Do I know that right now? Do we know that right now? I would say no.
Whole other area.
Yeah.
But I was thinking of Mike's question and around how we handle things without artificial intelligence, putting together data. And in my experience, so one of the things we do is we'll take that data and then we make assumptions, about this, that, or the other. And then we form a conclusion. So I think this is an AI. That's not something that I have experience with, but I know from just dealing with some really complicated stuff, that you get the data, got to make sure the data's right. But then you got to look at those assumptions, and I could be wrong, but I'm suspecting that those algorithms are they're kind of in the business of making those assumptions. Somebody baked in those assumptions, I think. I could be wrong. And I got a lot to learn, but that's my mind process around why it's at least something to look at.
Yeah.
I can speak to that if you want. And I used to do underwriting.
Yeah.
And there were certain jobs that tended to have certain other underwriting issues. So for example, if you're a bartender, you have a higher elevated chance of usually like smoking is one of those things that you have a higher chance of doing. It's just numbers. It's just causation versus correlation, right? I guess. But it's, when you're doing these AI transactions, they're super quick and they have to use that type of information.
Right. And so the difference, I've never done underwriting, but I've looked at how companies do underwriting. And, when I'm looking at it, I could always see what those assumptions were, bartender, whatever.
Right.
But I suspect there might be really more sophisticated kinds of assumptions in an algorithm. I don't know, but that would be of interest to see, whether you can identify them, just to make sure that they're, reasonable assumptions kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I could go into a lot and tell you all sorts of interesting
We'll talk
stuff after.
to continue that particular dust up. I think that there maybe what you're kind of getting to is when it comes to the creation of algorithms, I mean, going way back, like well into the 70s, way back. There were, folks that were not at the table. There were people that looked like me that were not at the table and were not considered in the baseline creation of a lot of these algorithms, which has over time created some unintended consequences of discrimination. I also have suffered housing discrimination. I've also been denied loans because there are things about me that flag, but on an individualized level, may not actually like rise to the occasion. So, there are so many of our systems that do go off of these assumptions for the sake of expediency, but at the individual level, like end up, leaving people out in the snow unintentionally.
And I understand what you're saying. It's always horrible. I understand what you're saying, but the looking at property and casualty, the insurance realm for vehicles. Not every kid is dangerous in a car, but because of the system, they have to charge more just based on that.
That's the thing, is like, that's one of the icky stuff. It's like, if you start doing too much lumping, you're gonna look at me and say, hey, you're black, you're gonna default on this loan, right? I'm not saying, but I'm saying that can be a thing that does end up happening, pick out any kind of trait. You got thicker eyebrows, I don't know. Maybe they'll correlate some reason.
So is that what this, because my guess is that this is just data, not, because if you're talking about like characteristics of color or that's definitely that would be.
I mean, no, they're like protected classes, but people do still suffer discrimination even as a protected class, which is why we have those protections.
But this bill doesn't, is this bill about data or is it about using, because if you're using color for a determination on something, that's like super illegal. The way, if I'm correct, it should be.
It is illegal, but people have plenty of ways, different kind of identifiers to get around to it.
It's a 19-page bill.
All right. All right.
But I think that, when you look at the credit reporting agencies, the fair credit reporting, right, that you have the ability to see what's in your report. And if you find something that's wrong, then you're able to contact and make that change and fix it.
Yeah.
And I think, when we're talking about the ability to understand what they're using in the algorithms and whether or not there's discrepancies in there that aren't true, should have the ability to take a look and understand why you were denied something, so that if there is something in there that's wrong, you could get it fixed.
Yeah, and the discrimination piece is really just a piece of this. It's really also focused on super high risk things, like I said, like when it comes to vehicle safety systems, weapon systems, that's where this bill focuses more. Both bills cover discrimination and algorithmic discrimination, automated decision-making system. But this one focuses on like the really bad stuff, basically. So, yeah. Okay, next one. What is next? Okay, so that one, this one is, Vermont Legal Aid reached out about this one, and this was, it was funny for me at the time because when they reached out, I'm on unemployment insurance and I had been trying to navigate the system. It was really not easy. And so they reached out about this bill with a concern that the new system that's being created, whether or not there was like a adequate kind of like testing scenario system and reporting system in place for making sure that once the system is implemented, that people are actually testing, making sure that there aren't bugs, that kind of stuff. I can assure you that I have no idea how long the current UI system has been in place, but there are plenty of bugs and circular mechanisms that don't let you actually functionally do anything that I had to escalate over and over and over again. So when I was asked to run this, I was like, yes, of course, I would love to make sure that our system is tested very well and thoroughly by a diverse set of stakeholders. Yeah, that's really the gist of that one.
A little behind.
Yes, I know. It's basically what need to happen like now, basically. So, anyways, that's what that one was. Anybody have questions on that?
I think you think JITOC has some of that responsibility for oversight?
It's definitely something I'm happy to try to push that in JITOC for sure.
Who's that?
Oh, Joint Information Technology Oversight Committee.
And that makes sense, that this would be part of that. This is its own and.
Sure. Okay.
I'll certainly volunteer.
Great. Commerce UI testing club. All right. Next one, digital IDs. So this one was asked, ACLU asked me about this one, and knowing kind of the data privacy and AI spaces, that I was already working on. This is a hyper-focused, narrowly focused data privacy bill, more or less, which is around digital IDs. And this is, although we're not requiring this in Vermont yet, some states are starting to. So it's really a proactive bill before we look at implementing anything like that. In general, the risks associated, I'll just go over a bullet list of here. So enabling constant tracking of us with the phones, requiring smartphone use is similar to Ann's bill, where technology is leaving people behind with the cash piece. This is like, what if people don't have smartphones? Are they still able to use physical IDs? And then the potential encouragement of unnecessary identity checks, undermining anonymity. So the safeguards, there's 12 safeguards that this covers, basically. So one around police access to phones, and verification, requiring handing over of phones, preventing system, like basically tracking by the government and vendor issuers of these, only sharing data that is necessary when it's needed. Let's see, there's a lot, but government kill switches, so IDs being able to be remotely just revoked and taken away. Again, physical IDs being an option. Data use, those are the big ones. I mean, it's generally just a really hyper-focused data privacy bill.
Does this bill impact the DMV's business model?
I mean, that's a question. Yeah. So I did not reach out to the DMV on this yet because I wasn't even sure if we'd want to take this up. So, but yeah, that would be a question for sure.
Question.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, just big picture, what is this sort of directed at?
So this is going on, thanks.
Thank you.
So this is like, so I don't know if you see, like in the airports and stuff, there will be like signs saying like mobile ID. So we're moving as a society, it seems like, toward requirement of our IDs being on our smartphones versus being able to have a plastic mobile ID. So then that Thanks, guys. Sorry, I should have framed that. Anyways, so it's really once we start moving in kind of like the cash to the credit card piece, once we're like completely changing how we're able to access certain things, similar to this of like, what does that mean for presenting our ID, for having to have a mobile device in order to even fly, like that kind of stuff, or and then the aspects of like who then runs kind of what that ID technology is? And what do they have access to do? Can they revoke stuff? Can they track other elements of your being, where you're going, that kind of stuff? So a lot of it has parallels to the data privacy bill itself, but just hyper focused on this technology.
So what's that issue of revoking?
There's concern that if you, I think, I'm guessing, filling in gaps here, but I could see that if you're like committed a crime or you did something else, like should you be able to lose your ID? Yeah.
Good question. If you're formulating them, you can catch up.
Yeah, I'm around. You know where I am. You know where to find me, Michael.
It's, I know I sound crazy.
You don't sound crazy.
Absolutely.
Part of all this data stuff that I feel like we kind of don't want to look at is that we're selling this for something. And kind of like if I was to do a piece of art and I sell it, I lose my rights to that. And I understand that it feels different because it's our data, but we literally sell it when we sign on to something. And it's a mindset. It's a mindset because if you don't want to sell it, then you don't use that particular product. It's like Google. I mean, I've sold my soul to Google, and let me tell you, once you sell your soul to Google, it gives you everything you want. I mean, I can do translations. I mean, come on. But that's what it is. I mean, we are selling our data, and whether or not instinctively we dislike that, we have the choice to do it.
Yeah, so, my framework is just a little different. Not different, but there's another layer to that for me, which is, was that contract, between arm's length people? And, there's this whole concept around unconscionable terms, that some terms are just aren't proper, especially if you have power imbalance and stuff like that. So I get your point. Yeah, and I do it myself, and I understand, my eyes wide open and some of that stuff. But I also think there's a concept of, are there some terms to that agreement that because of the power imbalance, you should take a look at it.
I think I think we should focus on, in general, like you really have to understand what you're doing. Because I don't know if people really understand. You just click, yes, I want this app. And nobody reads the 15 pages of.
There's also the functionality of time. Like people have things to do.
Right. But it's like we instinctively, we kind of know that we're doing it. When we click, just give me the app, but it is at the end of the day, that's our payment for this free app.
That was a paradigm that got put out into the world without the consumer having any participation in whether that was fair. Prior to the internet, there were not very many things where that was really the case.
Because there wasn't a market for it. And
there's always been a market for convenient things, or for life to be like a little bit more smooth. And I think because the promise of computers, because the promise of technology is that it will make things smooth. this is the mechanism by which we have to do that. You just sort of, I mean, every time I have to sign one of them, I do yell at my computer that I'm doing it under duress. You are, 'cause I am doing it under duress. I need this product. Like, I mean, this, like Google, I have also sold my soul to Google. Because Gmail came out and it was the best thing on the market.
Right.
It let you stack your threads, it like, and it innovated a lot. And for those innovations, which they know we're gonna pay for, we're kind of paying a lot to them, even though they say what our attention is not really worth that much to them.
But here's,
It's not individual, it's an aggregate,
It's
right?
an
but I mean, the thing is that, you know, we are utilizing that for the service.
it's
Yeah.
free.
But correct, we pay with our souls. But what the question is whether or not should we be looking at, you know, you have to provide a paid service that you're not using the data. But then again, you know, it's somebody's doing the programming and we're paying for that person to do the programming through our data that they're able to use for marketing, for whatever else purposes that they're doing it for. I know.
Nobody came out when this all started and said, this is your data token. You are in control of your data token and you can hand your data token over to that person. When I exchange cash for something, even when I'm running a card, there is a understood agreement. This thing just sort of kind of crept up on us and then we're like, well, so email's the base standard. I need to have a decent email.
And I would agree with you. It did creep up on us. And it, you know, that's the reason why they passed laws to make it so that you have to acknowledge it with a 15,000 page document that nobody ever reads. Right? It doesn't matter if it's like 5 pages or 10 pages or 500 pages. We don't read it. I mean, I haven't. Has anybody else read them? No, we just,
I started, but.
right. You know,
Depressed.
Exactly.
right. And but on the other hand, if we were to say, no, you can't take our information, how are they getting paid to do the programming? And do they have the right to be paid for the services that they're doing?
I mean, it takes all the way back. You have to take us back. Like you said, we'd have to go back. We are really tasked with having to correct a problem that actually isn't fully ours to correct. So, I mean, if we like went back to the early 90s and already had like a actual like monetary exchange, which I feel like we I didn't want to know.
Well,
I mean, we do with Netflix. I have to pay subscriptions all the time. Like, I thought you were just interested in the bill. I mean.
We are, that's why we're here.
I'm interested in that.
Just getting some inside baseball ahead of time.
I am interested, and actually it pertains to commerce as well. As
Yes,
being interested in
yes.
farming.
I was like, oh, Abby's interested in the right to farm bill. That's
I was sent to get you so we can leave. So we can go home.
Really interested.
I mean, so we can learn about the bill.
Arsenal, thank you for coming in early, we appreciate it.
my pleasure.
Could just,
Happy to be here. Yeah, for the record, my name is Angela Arsenault, representative from Williston. Hi, everyone. I feel like I of course, when I got this invitation, I was like, oh, Edie and I would do this very differently. So I'm sad that she's not here, and I hope I do it justice. But our bill, H365, is really it's a piece of a bill that I introduced last session, which was aimed at regulating social media companies. And we kind of took one of the more interesting parts of that bill, which was this registry idea. So as you all in this committee know better than many in the building, there are companies that are right now, for the most part, entirely unregulated. And we're doing what we can to attempt to rein in some of their actions, which we know from internal research, things that have been released legally and things that have been released through whistleblowers that the intentions and actions of these companies, social media companies especially, are not always pure. And as we attempt to regulate their actions, I believe it would be really handy to know who they all are and what they're doing. So the idea of the registry, similar to the data broker registry, proposed in H365, there would be a social media registry and an AI company registry. And we picked those two industries because, as I just said, they're pretty much unregulated right now, unchecked in many ways, and doing harm. And they may be capable of doing good, but we see a lot of harm caused by these types of companies. So the idea is to create a registry in Vermont that basically flips the script on a user agreement. We all click a box, sign these user agreements all the time. We don't know what we're agreeing to.
We're up to 15,000 pages on the user agreement right now.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. And we really, how many times have you opened up a website or web, page and even if it tells you they're using cookies, they're going to track you. And sometimes you have the option to say no thanks. Sometimes you don't. And if you want to access the information that you're trying to access, you just kind of have to go along with it. Well, the idea with this bill is to create a registry that says, as a state, yes, you are welcome to do business in our state, social media company or AI company. All you have to do is agree to these terms. And the terms that we've laid out in the bill are designed to mirror or exactly replicate terms that might be included in the data privacy bill or the kids code bill. So of course, could certainly and should certainly be tweaked, but that was the idea. And we don't, and in the AI bill, that we've yet to really dig into, I guess. But so yes, company agree to these terms, register for $100 with the Secretary of State, and then tell us every year that you're following the terms that you've agreed to. So it's a way to develop a known universe for the enforcement of the laws that we're trying to pass to protect consumers. Rather than the way we kind of have to work now is to wait for something bad to happen. And then we try to enforce retroactively what we've asked these companies to do. And the idea of the registry really is to be able to more proactively enforce our consumer protection laws. That's the short version. I can tell you we included AI. I sent a link to Anna Grace that it's a link to a policy paper from the National Center for National Education Policy Center, I believe. A paper that they put out last year regarding it's called Time for a Pause. Without effective public oversight, AI in schools will do more harm than good. And I was talking to the authors of the paper, and they said, what would be really great is if we knew what these companies were, because AI is now embedded in so many products that are used by so many schools that the users of the products may not even know that they're using AI. They may not know that their kids' data really is being used to feed the learning models and all the language models. So it was sort of through that conversation that we were like, well, there was this registry idea, the social media bill, and could we do it for social media companies and AI companies? And that's how we landed on the bill. That I have a link. I was maybe gonna this is where Edie and I, this is where our, do we go the Angela approach or the Edie, the like more conservative Edie approach? I have a link to a trailer that I wanted to show you all, and I can either show it or just send you the link to the trailer. There's a new documentary by Bloomberg Films called Can't Look Away. Don't show it yet. Okay. And it's, I just think it really,
We're gonna open Kids Go to it.
okay. Code Thunder. But I will say that, you know, I've watched the trailer 3 or 4 times now, and it's weird because it's not uplifting. I'll say that. But I watch it because it steels my resolve, and I feel a great responsibility to do everything we can to try to get our arms around the issue of social media regulation and AI regulation and data privacy, just this huge ball of issues wrapped up in billions of dollars. That is truly, I mean, kids are dying because of what these companies are doing. And you might say, like, most kids aren't dying. Thankfully, that's true. But how can we sit here and say that any loss of life is okay? I can't say that. I have 2 teenagers. I've seen what social media does in their lives. Luckily, I kind of wised up, and the younger one isn't allowed on social media, but it's devastating what's happening to our kids and to the culture of, or the fabric of our culture, really. I'm watching it thin and fray, and it has to do with the algorithms that are in use and rewarding the worst behavior. And it's all by design, and it's all because of profits. And it's, I think it's so important that we do everything at the state level that we can, because at the federal level, we know that the money and the influence is even worse than we've seen here in our little state, way worse. And I just think that the federal government, the Congress is going to be stuck for a long time and won't be able to act, I should say, won't choose to act because of the special interests and the power they have. So I think we have to do something, and I know we are, and thank you all for being part of that effort. And we hope that this idea might serve as a worthy complement to the other bills that we're working on here.
So do you think that this bill, we could wrap up the cell phone free into this bill? No, I'm not joking. Like, this is it's a passion project for me as well. And I
Good to
signed on.
know. Yes, thank you. I know.
Cell phones are awful for children. And, it's killing it's causing death.
Mhm.
Yes. And let me rephrase that. The smartphones are, right? Like, it probably wouldn't be a problem with the old fashioned Nokia. But do you think that's something we could wrap into it? Or is it germane?
I mean, I would, Betsy Ann is the arbiter of germaneness, I suppose. I think there are a number of bills that we could attach the Phone Free Schools bill to, because it's a mental health issue. It's a technology issue. It's an education issue. It's certainly in so many ways relevant to a lot of the work that's done here in this committee.
So the purpose of registering is specifically so that people play not by targeting children, correct? Is that?
Yeah, so the requirements, in order to register, a company has to say that, we abide by these standards. And they are similar to what you'll find in Kids Code and, the age appropriate design code. And, I think also with the AI bill, some of the harms of AI that are known right now, we just tried to pull together those things those standards, I guess I'd call them, and say, in order to do business in this state, you have to follow these standards. And if you attest to that, great. If you wanted to work in some periodic enforcement checks or something, I think that would be worthwhile. But that's the idea. It's a user agreement with the state of Vermont.
Sorry.
More readable than most.
So I'm reading in your bill, dark patterns. Can you elaborate on what a dark pattern is for the benefit of the community?
I can, and Monique certainly can, and you will know very well very soon. Dark patterns are, I would call it a design feature strategy. It's a strategy and a design feature built into social media platforms and other tech interfaces that really are quite, what's the word? I'm thinking surreptitious, but it's like when you don't know you're doing it. Subliminal. It's kind of like subliminal. Monique could probably might be able to explain it better, but it's design features that the user, by design, the user is not entirely aware of what they're doing, but they're being manipulated into certain actions. I'm trying to think of a super easy example. Well, even the use of likes, and they're tapping into, by design, your body's dopamine reaction. And so you will find, without consciously realizing it, especially if you are a child and your prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, you will be checking your phone, trying to get that hit of dopamine as often as possible. And the more you do, the more you need it, because you enter into a dopamine deficient state when you have this dopamine overload. If you haven't read Dr. Anna Lembke, Dopamine Nation, really amazing book that actually explains things in a very user-friendly, reader-friendly way, I think. It's a book about addiction, which is what these products are designed to do, is create an addiction. So dark patterns are well documented and very commonly used in these products.
So I'm going to share Mike's perspective on the cell phones. Certainly love to see it reappear at some point. My districts, my school districts have said, this would be great. Now, why they can't adopt a school policy around that is entirely clear to me. But
I've heard it from a number of districts, so they're not alone.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't usually really get on board with a lot of the things that Montpelier, the schools need to do. But I think that seems to be an exception. So I'm glad you sponsored the bill. Hope we'll see it again.
Yes, me too.
Probably people out there that would rather see the wrath of parents be directed to state level.
Yeah.
Yes, that is true. And since we're talking about it, I will just say that the level of ire and the wrath experienced by districts that have done it is way, way smaller than what everyone is afraid of.
Lamoille did it.
Lamoille South, yeah.
They said maybe just a few. And it's worked really well for them.
Yep.
And school boards are terrified of the idea And they shouldn't be, because it's better for children. It's way more healthier to have cell phone free schools.
Better for teachers too.
And better for teachers, although I've heard some teachers also not go along with it, and yeah.
It's a workforce retention issue, because many teachers say, the teachers who've experienced cell phone free schools now say, I wouldn't teach if we went back to, if we got rid of this policy.
Yeah,
It was too hard before.
it's a scary step and it needs to be taken. We have the education bill coming up tomorrow, maybe an amendment that could include Sorry.
Funny. Yeah, let's. There are vehicles out there, I think.
Yeah,
Watch out for his stampery.
I don't have a problem sending an email to Beth right now. But that being said, you know, for this particular bill, could we write in there that social media companies are not allowed to create the algorithms for our children? Because they shouldn't be, they don't have the right to sell themselves. We do. They do not. And quite frankly, like you said, the dopamine hits, they should not, social media should not be doing that for kids. But I don't know if that's something that need to take up on a different bill.
From kids code.
Yeah, well, I think it is addressed in kids code and through age appropriate design. That age appropriate design says, you know, you can't utilize these algorithms in products that are either likely to, like, I don't know exactly what the language will be this year, likely to be accessed or, you know, accessed by children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A carbon copy of my bill to Beth.
Angela, did you think about looking at the penalties and
Yeah.
if a company got to a point where they were $100 a pop, got to $10,000 in a year? Is that a kind of company that we would want to re-register again?
Necessarily. No, I wouldn't. Yeah, I think there's
And did you talk to the Ledge Council about companies that are not registered can't do business in the state of Vermont? Is that the Geofence Vermont?
no. But that's a yes. But yes.
This is the walk.
Yes, yes. I think there's a, I would love to.
These products are gonna be as a scare tactic to like, wait, why aren't we blocking these products? Oh, boy.
You know, I think we went into it assuming compliance with the law.
That's
You know,
bad.
and wishing that would be a safe assumption, but understanding that there would be work to do in committee as far as really aligning this with, again, our data privacy laws and kids code and, you know, aligning the penalties as well and aligning enforcement, all of it. This is totally meant to be, I've been talking, so especially with the phone free schools bill, we talk about, and anyone who was living in Vermont during COVID may remember the Swiss cheese approach that our Commissioner Levine talked about a lot, the multi-layers of mitigation. So if you think of Swiss cheese with its holes, you know, you got a bunch of pieces of slices of split Swiss cheese lined up, like you will still have holes. There will still be ways for people with the intent and malintent even to do what they will do. And that's why we need many layers. I think, you know, something I think of these bills as a suite of bills and really a necessary complements to one another. I would include phone free schools, the registry bill, data privacy, age appropriate design code, and certainly even, you know, our version of Daniel's Law that just passed, like everything that we can do to create that those layers of mitigation. I hope that we will do. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I'll tell you all about the right to farm bill if you.
Yeah, no.
It's in there. It was very interesting.
No, yeah, Justin was doing a great job.
Yes, we should all sit in on different committees, at some point, but I can answer any questions and Michael, come to me before you offer that floor amendment.
I'm sending the email now, but yeah, carbon copy too.
So committee, that's it for today. Again, tomorrow, remember we have a hearing at 9 o'clock in room 11. We'll try to be there a little bit early, and I know I think they're serving coffee and,
We out in the hallway at a time.
yeah,
Yeah, so that.
right outside, so. Then we go back come back here and continue our introductions. Any questions?